What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Basketball Network Selection Show Watch Party. We're going to be tuning into the selection committee's live bracket reveal for the upcoming 2025 NCAA tournament and breaking down all of the teams and maybe going through some predictions and our initial reactions. But before we jump into it, let's go ahead and look at ESPN and what they're currently looking at for the updated bracket projections and what Joe Lunardi has. So on ESPN's Bracketology, currently the top overall seed he has listed, he has Auburn, obviously, again, like we've been saying in all of our videos, best team in the nation in terms of resume, most quad one wins, have been absolutely dominant this year. Looks like he has Boise State as the first team out, with Xavier being that last team in. But what I'm really curious about is this bubble, right? We have a weak bubble this year, but really try to figure out who's going to be in and who's going to be left out. We see teams like Oklahoma, Arkansas, West Virginia, and Utah State should be comfortably in. I also think Vanderbilt is pretty comfortably in as well, but the biggest ones that I'm nervous about are Indiana and Xavier, whether they make the field or not, and then obviously the trio of Boise State, Texas, and North Carolina. I think those are the five teams when it comes to the bracket reveal that we're really going to be seeing which ones get in and which ones get out. With Ohio State, they're currently at 17 and 15, and with their record and quad one wins, I don't think they get in over Texas. So I'm not expecting the Buckeyes to make it in. And then everyone else listed in the next four out, I just don't see a path for them in terms of the teams that are ahead of them. UC Irvine, great season, but unfortunately lost in the Big West Championship last night. You have Dayton out of the A10, Wake Forest, and SMU. And obviously, looking at those teams compared to Texas, North Carolina, and Boise State, I don't think any of them get over it. But obviously, bracket's going to be revealed here very soon, and I can't wait to see what the committee has. I'm dropping a Q&A in the chat just to see what you think the biggest surprise of Selection Sunday will be. So go ahead and make sure and mention that in the chat. Who do you think is going to be the biggest surprise? Is there a team that we're not talking about that's going to be in the field, or a team that is going to be left out that everyone thinks is going to be in? Let me know. I'm excited to see what everybody's predictions are. So currently 4:57, we only have 4:58. We only have 2 more minutes until the bracket is revealed. I'm assuming whenever we're talking about the 1 seeds for this bracket, it's going to be obviously Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Houston. My 2 seeds that I'm thinking are going to be Alabama, Tennessee, Michigan State, and St. John's. I feel like those 8 teams are pretty solidified as a 1 or a 2 seed. Some other teams, Michigan just winning the Big Ten tournament, I think they might jump up to a 3 seed, and that's a team that I don't really know what to do with because all of their recent wins have been by less than 5 points. I think the Big Ten championship win was by 10, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing with the Michigan Wolverines because they play close games. It doesn't matter what type of competition that is, but they always seem to pull it out. So Michigan, I've been having them get upset in the first round of most of my bracket predictions, but with the way this team is playing, and even though they're playing these close games, they're still getting the win. Might not be doing that anymore. Wisconsin, I think probably going to be around a 3 seed. Same with Texas Tech. And then that last 3 seed, I think it's kind of a debate between Kentucky, Iowa State, Texas A&M. Those seem to be the teams that are going to be vying for that last spot. Then moving on to our 4s and 5 seeds, I think again it's going to be 2 of Iowa State, Texas A&M, and Kentucky. Oregon and Maryland should be up there. Maybe in Arizona that got to the Big 12 championship game, but could see them on the 5 line. Same with Purdue. I think they're going to be around the 5 seed as well. But one team I would like to see the committee put more respect on is Clemson. I know they lost in the ACC semifinals to Louisville, but they've had an incredible season, 27-6 on the year, and really just the biggest win was that one against Duke. So I'm expecting a lot from Clemson. Think I'm going to be picking them to go pretty far. but we'll just have to wait and see. But actually, it is 5 p.m., so the bracket should be revealed at any moment. And we're going to be looking and picking out every single matchup from the first round once this bracket is revealed. So let me go ahead and pull up this Excel document I have, and we'll be going in and filling it out as the bracket is revealed in CBS. Theme music is the best. Oh, and it looks like they're starting off with a tribute to Greg Gumbel, which is very much appreciated. I mean, just the absolute best from CBS Sports and bracket reveal. Also, before I forget, let me know if you want to join. We're going to have the Basketball Network's Bracket Challenge on ESPN. I'll be sending out the link and including it in all of my videos going forward. And make sure you join that one as well. Here we go. Bracket is about to be revealed on CBS. Adam Zucker looks to be the guy that's going to be replacing Greg Gumbel right now, obviously with Clark Kellogg, Jay Wright, Seth Davis as well at the table. Also, a question that I had that I want to know is Auburn. I believe they're going to be the number 1 overall seed, but have lost 3 out of their past 4, and no champion has ever lost 3 out of their last 4 games going into the NCAA tournament. Do you still think that Auburn is a title contender? I do, but as of right now, with the way it looks, I believe it's kind of looking like Florida or Duke, especially with Cooper Flagg coming back. But obviously, if he's not 100%, that could be something that changes. But I'm thinking right now the top 2 seeds that I've been looking at is Florida and Duke to make it to the championship game. But obviously, matchup dependent. We'll have to see how the bracket plays out. All right. Here we go. The anticipation is killing me. Usually they start it right at the start, but here we go. Starting to see all the teams coming in, showing whether or not they're going to get in. I love seeing the celebrations, especially from the small schools. And we're underway. Number 1 overall seed, the Auburn Tigers. No surprise there, obviously. Best team in the nation in terms of resume, so they had to be the number 1 seed. Didn't really matter once they made it to the semifinals of the SEC tournament, in my opinion. And you couldn't put Duke above them just because of the quad 1 wins that Auburn had. Alabama State versus St. Francis in the 16 seed. St. Francis, first time in the tournament, so that'll be a fun one to watch in the first 4. Maybe they can make a push to play Auburn in the first round, but we'll have to see if they were able to beat Alabama. Louisville at an 8 seed? That is, wow. Okay, that's already my biggest surprise is Louisville's all the way down at 8 seed. I was expecting a 7 for them. Creighton at the 9 seed. That's going to be a really good matchup. Ryan Kalkbrenner and Stephen Ashworth from Creighton taking on Pat Kelsey and the Louisville Cardinals. Michigan at a 5 seed. Wow. Okay. We have a few teams that I think are already underseeded. Louisville and Michigan was not expecting a 5 or an 8 seed for both of those. I expected them to be maybe a seed or 2 higher. Didn't really respect the Big Ten championship, I feel like, that Michigan just went. Oh. Okay. This is one of my favorite upset picks of the bracket. UC San Diego, I've been saying it, mentioned it in earlier videos as well. I love the Tritons, have really good predictive metrics as well. I think UC San Diego might be my pick in that one. Okay, we got Texas A&M as a 4 seed. Yeah, beat Auburn earlier this year. We'll see who they got as their 13 seed. Yale. Man, I really like the matchup for both of those. Yale is very high scoring team. Might be able to outscore Texas A&M actually because they rely heavily on their defense, especially if this Texas A&M offense is as inconsistent as we've seen. Oh, then we have Ole Miss as our 6 seed in the South region, taking on San Diego State. North Carolina got in. Are you? Of course they get in. Oh my god, I cannot believe they put in North Carolina. They're 1-12 in quad 1. 1-12 in quad 1. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe they got in. The chairman of the board actually is the UNC athletic director, so I'm not going to say that has anything to do with it, but we'll see. Iowa State getting the respect they deserve at a 3 seed. They'll play Lipscomb, another team. A lot of the teams that I've been looking at as maybe first round upsets seem to be falling in the South region. Marquette down at a 7 seed. Ooh, versus New Mexico. That should be a very good first round matchup. Donovan Dent from the Lobos, 20 point per game scorer. Marquette's going to have to lock him down, but I think they might have the pieces to do it. Stevie Mitchell, for sure, a lockdown defender. Michigan State's the 2 seed in Auburn's region, which is what we've been seeing in a lot of our predictions videos as well from ESPN's Bracketology from Joe Lunardi. So looks like Michigan State versus Auburn could be an Elite 8 matchup that we see, but let's see who the 15 seed is that they play against. And looks like Bryant, high scoring 15 seed, just won their conference tournament, obviously. Rafael Penzin, believe he's around 18, 19 point per game scorer. I'm very intrigued by this one. UC San Diego versus Michigan's the first one that stands out to me. I'm very surprised that, honestly, UC San Diego was someone that could have maybe gotten an 11 seed, but looks like they were put down at a 12 seed, which makes sense out of the Big West, but Michigan better watch out in that one. I can see UC San Diego being a first round upset for sure. Another matchup I like is the one right there, Texas A&M and Yale. I think we could see a 12 versus 13 seed matchup in the second round, but I'm not as confident in Yale as I am UC San Diego. UC San Diego's prediction metrics are absolutely insane for a team out of the Big West. They've just had an incredible year so far, and then obviously capped it off with the title win over UC Irvine, which is a really good team in the Big West as well. Someone that people considered maybe as an at-large bid, but UC San Diego as a 12 seed is 36 in Kim Palm's ratings, which is absolutely incredible. 57th in offensive efficiency, 30th in defensive efficiency. That's very surprising that we see Michigan sliding down to the 5 seed, but maybe something with the Big Ten playing as close as they do to the selection show. But that is something that the committee does plan for, is they have contingency plans based on who wins each of those tournaments, specifically Big Ten and the American, but obviously all the other tournaments that happen on Selection Sunday as well. But I am extremely surprised by this. But before we start unveiling the next bracket, let's go ahead and start picking this one to see who we would like just in our initial reaction. So obviously in the first round matchup, we see Auburn taking on Alabama State or St. Francis, and I'd for sure be picking Auburn. I don't think they're going to have any issues. Louisville Creighton is where it already gets interesting, because I think Louisville is a team that could be a 7 seed, especially making it all the way to the ACC final game against Duke, and then playing a Creighton team that made it to the Big East finals and lost in a close one to St. John's. I believe I would take Louisville initially on this one, but it is something that I'd have to do some research on just to double confirm. But I like this Louisville team. I mean, they're 23rd in Kim Palm's ratings, pretty good on both offense and defense, and Pat Kelsey has all of these players bought in playing a Creighton team that relies heavily on Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kalkbrenner. They have a few other pieces that they can go to, but those are the two main players. So I think if Louisville can shut down Kalkbrenner on the inside and then put some lockdown defenders, especially Chucky Hepburn on Stephen Ashworth, I think they'd be able to advance. And so I do like Louisville in that matchup. Michigan versus UC San Diego. As I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, I think Michigan is one of the teams I've been predicting to lose in the first round. And this is probably the worst upset pick or matchup that they could have in the first round. I really like the Tritons out of UC San Diego. So initial reaction is I'd be picking UC San Diego to advance past Michigan. I know they just came off a Big Ten title, but this team really plays close games in every single one. And although they've been winning them, like at some point you're going to get got. And I think UC San Diego is a team that can do that. Then we have Texas A&M versus Yale. Texas A&M, I go back and forth on them. They're just very inconsistent. Like we've seen them be absolutely amazing beating Auburn, but then we've also seen them play terrible and just being very inconsistent. I think I would stick with A&M winning this matchup over Yale, but I think it would be a close one. Ole Miss versus San Diego State or North Carolina. This is one where I go back and forth because North Carolina, I do not think should have made it into the tournament. Truly, I think they should have been left out, but because they are in the tournament, I think they can do some damage, especially as an 11 seed. I would expect North Carolina to beat San Diego State, and then you have North Carolina versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss took Auburn down to the wire in the SEC tournament, so I could see Ole Miss winning this one, but I'm actually going to be picking North Carolina, I think, initially. Just with the way that they've played, like even when they played against Duke, it's been a close one. Obviously lost to them both times with and without Cooper Flag. So maybe this isn't a good pick, but I'm just going to pick North Carolina in this one to move on. Iowa State versus Lipscomb. Give me Iowa State. I really like this Iowa State team. And then we have Marquette, New Mexico. I think I like Marquette in this one. And then Michigan State Bryant. Give me Michigan. But next one up is the East region where we see Duke as the number 1 seed. Obviously, it makes sense. Top 2 seeds kind of been like that for majority of the season, so not surprised by that at all. Taking on either American or Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's out of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. Don't think there's going to be any issues for Duke there. Then their 8-9 matchups are Mississippi State. Josh Hubbard, a player to watch out of Mississippi State. Think he could make some big moves in March Madness, but I don't necessarily like that matchup versus Duke in the second round. Taking on Baylor. So Baylor was a team that was slipping in the rankings recently. I thought they might get a 10 seed, but it looks like the committee respects them enough to give them a 9. We got Oregon as the 5 seed, and they're playing in Seattle, so that's going to be pretty close to a home game, especially when you're going up against Liberty, which is a pretty trendy pick that we've seen recently. A lot of people calling out Liberty having good predictive metrics as well. So Liberty's a team that I like in this one, but I don't think I'd be picking them over Oregon. Then we have Arizona coming in as the 4 seed. So respectable, makes sense. Just made it to the Big 12 title game against Houston. Ooh, taking on the Akron Zips. This team can score, puts up a lot of points, multiple 90-point games recently as well. So that could be a high-scoring game, especially because Arizona's defense has been slipping recently, it seems. Then in our 6-11 matchup, we see BYU as a 6 seed. Okay. BYU thought they might be able to make it a little higher, but that makes sense. We're cut short in the Big 12 tournament, so BYU is a 6 seed. Makes sense to me. Then their 11-seeded opponent, VCU. So winning the A10 gets them up to the 11 seed versus BYU. Man, this is great offense versus great defense. VCU full court presses a lot of the time. I think that could give BYU some trouble, but they do have Igor Dimon, Richie Saunders, 2 guys that are pretty capable of handling the ball. Wisconsin is the 3 seed. So losing the Big Ten tournament doesn't really look like it hurts Wisconsin that much. Might have been able to get to a 2, but I had them as a 3 line anyway, so makes sense. Keeps them there as the 3 seed, and they'll be taking on Montana. Don't really like this matchup for Montana. I think Wisconsin just able to score a little too much, which, however, they weren't against Michigan. I mean, they only put up 53 points. And we have St. Mary's as our 7 seed in the East region. And they are going to be taking on Vanderbilt. Okay, Vanderbilt, 10 seed, avoids first 4. Mark Byington, first year with the Commodores, gets them in as the 10 seed. I'm actually kind of surprised that they're not in 11 or at least in the first 4, but we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the bracket shakes out. But St. Mary's taking on Vanderbilt. I think I like Vanderbilt in that matchup, actually. Ooh, and then Duke gets Alabama as their 2 seed in their bracket. I think it was they got the loser between the Alabama-Tennessee game is what it seemed like. They were going to get the lower of the 2 because you can't put those SEC schools in one of the other brackets because it's more than likely going to be Auburn or Florida as the 1 seed. So had to put Alabama and Tennessee in the Duke and probably Houston brackets. So that makes sense, but they get Alabama. All right, and their 15 seed is Robert Morris. So first round matchup, Duke versus American / Mount St. Mary's, one of the 2. Don't think it really matters which one comes out, which one wins this one. I'm going to be picking Duke in that matchup. Mississippi State versus Baylor. Man, this is a game where it's like, I don't know which way to go. Mississippi State has definitely had the better season, but Baylor does have pieces and a lot of experience. Brought in Jeremy Roach from Duke. They have Langston Love, Jaden Nunn that's played in a lot of games. You got Norchad O'Meara that made that run with Miami, and then obviously you have the stud freshman and VJ Edgecombe. Also another really good freshman and Robert Wright from Baylor. I think I might like Baylor in this matchup to get the, not necessarily upset, but the win in the 8-9 game. Oregon versus Liberty. As I mentioned earlier, Liberty, trendy upset pick, but I think I like Oregon in this one. Arizona, Akron. Arizona has struggled in the early parts of the NCAA tournament in past years, especially under Tommy Lloyd, but I'm going to stick with the Wildcats to get past Akron in this one, but I could see Akron be a team that gets up and scores a lot of points on this Arizona team. BYU versus VCU. BYU was one of the hottest teams in the nation until they ran into Houston. And VCU plays really good defense, similar to Houston. I feel like they might get after you even a little more, especially in the full court area. So I think I like VCU in this matchup. So give me the Rams to get past BYU, but this is one that could go either way. Wisconsin versus Montana. I don't think I'm going to be picking Montana in this one, so I got to go with Wisconsin. Yeah, looks like Montana 250th in defensive efficiency according to KenPom. That is not going to cut it when you play an offense like Wisconsin, specifically a player like John Tanji. So I like the Wisconsin Badgers to get this one. Then we have St. Mary's taking on Vanderbilt. St. Mary's versus Vanderbilt. St. Mary's, Augustus Marshallonis, Mitchell Saxon, 2 seniors on the team, been there all 4 years. Really have played extremely well this year. Swept Gonzaga in the regular season and then lost. In the WCC final to Gonzaga, taking on a Vanderbilt team that, again, as I mentioned, Mark Byington, first season as the Vanderbilt coach was at James Madison last year. Getting them into the tournament is impressive. Brought in some key transfers, specifically AJ Hoggard from Michigan State. I think I'm going to be picking Vanderbilt. The competition that they have played this year is just far outweighs who St. Mary's has played. And then we have Alabama versus Robert Morris. Alabama, even though they did lose to Tennessee, I mean, when this team is hot, they play like they're the best team in the country. When they're hitting the threes, because they like to shoot them, obviously, I think I'd like Alabama in that matchup. But it's a team that could get cold and could get upset, but I don't think Robert Morris is capable of doing that. So give me Alabama in that matchup. But we see that we have our first two regions down. So 2 number 1 seeds are Auburn and Duke. Then we have Michigan State and Alabama as our 2 seeds. So those are all kind of what I was expecting. I mentioned earlier, no surprises there. I would expect the other 1 seeds to be Florida and Houston, and then the other 2 seeds, St. John's and Tennessee, is what I would expect. But biggest surprise so far, North Carolina getting in the field. I thought the North Carolina was out. I thought they were behind Texas. I thought they were behind Boise State, Xavier, Indiana. So we haven't seen any of those 3 teams being named just yet. So curious to see who we think is going to make it over them. But we'll have to wait until the second part of the bracket is revealed. Let me know in the comments or in the chat what you think and who you are surprised at seeing, or what's your biggest surprise so far. Mine's definitely got to be North Carolina. Also, I'm pretty surprised by Michigan getting a 5 seed. I was expecting a 4. Louisville at an 8. Big surprise as well. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of teams that I think are underseeded. I'm trying to go through and figure out if there's anyone I think could be overseeded. But so far, Baylor might be the team that could be overseeded. I was expecting a 9 or a 10 from them. I didn't think they would be in Dayton, so they might be the last 9 in. We'll have to wait until the committee reveals their seed lists. But a 9 seems decently fair. Arizona as a 4 seed makes sense. BYU 6, Oregon as a 5. Oregon, team to look at because they have some really good wins this season. Beat Alabama, have beat up on some other Big Ten teams, but then they've also taken some bad losses. So we'll just have to wait and see. And then we move on to our next region, and we have Houston as our number 1 overall seed. They're at the bottom side of the bracket. So Houston winning the Big 12, absolutely dominating the Big 12 this season, both regular season and the current tournament. Didn't seem like anybody was able to compete with the Houston Cougars. They have improved depth this year, especially if you remember last year, the Jamal Shed injury just completely killed this team. They weren't able to do anything after that. But this year, improved depth. Oh my goodness, they get Gonzaga as an 8 seed. I really thought Gonzaga might be able to get up to a 7 seed with the WCC title, but looks like the committee didn't care enough about that and left them as an 8 seed. That is very unfortunate for the Houston Cougars. Gonzaga in the predictive metrics are just absolute predictive darlings, as you will. They're 9th in KenPom ranking right now, and to have that as a team that's down at the 8 seed is very unfortunate for the Cougars. Going to have a tough second round matchup, and they'll be taking on Georgia out of the SEC. Asa Newell, really good freshman, going to go into the NBA draft this season. Clemson comes in as a 5 seed. That's respectable. They could have been a 6 seed, so I like Clemson there as a 5. I think they have a really good team and are primed to make a run. I actually might pick Clemson over Houston if I have them both getting to the Sweet 16 matchup, but it looks like they're going up against Will Wade and the McNeese Cowboys, another really good upset pick that I like, but I don't know if McNeese is going to be able to get past Clemson. Clemson's just a team that I'm really liking right now. Purdue comes in as a 4 seed, been struggling recently, and they are playing High Point, which High Point is a team that honestly should have gotten into the tournament last year, but lost in the semifinals of their conference tournament. But they have definitely been the best team out of the Big South the last 2 seasons, and another team that I like this season, might be able to make some noise. Then we have Illinois coming in as a 6 seed. That's a bit surprising. Thought maybe they would get to a 7 seed, but right now listed as a 6 seed. And then Texas and Xavier get in. Wow. I'm very surprised by this because I thought there were 2 spots for 5 teams: Texas, Xavier, North Carolina, Indiana, and Boise State. And we've already seen North Carolina, Texas, and Xavier, so that must mean Indiana and Boise State are out, plus another team that we're not thinking of or accounting for right now. So that's pretty surprising. Kentucky getting a 3 seed in Mark Pope's first season. Really impressive, but I think they're going to have a tough time in March. Having the injuries to Jackson Robinson, Kerr, Kriisa, Lamont Butler not playing fully healthy either. I think they're going to be able to get past Troy in their first round matchup, which comes in as the 14 seed, but that's a tough one for them. UCLA coming in as a 7 seed. A lot of bracketology predictions, they were a 6, so 1 seed lower than expected, but going up against a Utah State team, which is another team that was on the bubble, but I thought was comfortably in. They are a 10 seed. That's going to be a really high-scoring team going up against UCLA. If UCLA's defense is able to hold Utah State, though, they'll be able to get by them in that matchup. And then Tennessee, as I mentioned, the other 2 seed, has to be in the region with Houston because you can't put a 1 and 2 seed from the same conference. And then they're going up against Wofford. Chris, I agree. I think Kentucky's overseeded as well, especially with the injuries that they're experiencing. Jackson Robinson and Kerr Kriisa, and then Lamont Butler's not 100% with that shoulder. Andrew Carr has had some injuries as well. I just feel like they're pretty banged up, so I'm pretty surprised with Kentucky coming in as a 3 seed. I thought they would be more on the 4 line, but I guess the committee's really respecting what they did throughout the season and not just holding those injuries against them as much. So something to see there. Let's look. I'm very surprised with Texas and Xavier both getting in to the tournament on this one, especially since we already had North Carolina. That might mean like a San Diego State doesn't make it in. Indiana. Those are the teams I'm looking at right now. San Diego State, Indiana, and Boise State, I guess, are the 3 teams I'm looking at right now that I think might be on the chopping block. We've already seen Utah State get in. We've already seen Vanderbilt get in. So I'm not sure. Maybe Oklahoma, but there's no way they're leaving Oklahoma out, in my opinion. If you put Texas in, you have to put Oklahoma in. I'm very surprised by this one. But let's go ahead and pick our matchups and what we like in this one. So Houston versus SIU Edwardsville. Don't think the Cougars are going to have any issues on that one. So give me Houston to advance there. Gonzaga versus Georgia. Like I mentioned earlier, Gonzaga, predictive darlings in terms of the metrics. They just are very high on both the offensive end, but also on the defensive end, not that bad there. You might think, well, Gonzaga allows a lot of points. They just play at such a high pace that obviously there are going to be more points that are scored. And if you've watched my video from earlier on about the only teams that can win the national championship, I'll be doing an updated one. And the background behind that is basically in 20 of the last 21 NCAA tournaments, the national champion was top 21 in KenPom offensive efficiency and top 31 in KenPom defensive efficiency. And Gonzaga was just on the outside looking in of that metric with their defense being around the mid-30s. They've actually jumped up to 29th in defensive efficiency according to KenPom. So if that's the case, Gonzaga does meet the criteria based on the recent results of NCAA tournaments to be a national champion. And for them to come in as an 8 seed is absolutely crazy. I understand they don't have necessarily the best wins. Main win is against a Baylor team that isn't as good as we expected them to be. Still an NCAA tournament team, but not as good as we expected. And then obviously they just got the big win against St. Mary's, which is what I thought might push them to that 7 line. But getting them to an 8 seed is pretty surprising. Aaron, true, we haven't seen West Virginia yet, which is another team. In my opinion, Aaron, West Virginia has to be in if you have Texas in. West Virginia has to be in because they just have first off, better record than Texas, 19-13 compared to 17-15. Also, they play in the Big 12. There are just a lot of things that are going on with West Virginia that I think still means that they should meet the criteria of an NCAA tournament team. If this committee leaves them out, then I think they're taking injuries into account with West Virginia being the Tucker DeVries injury. But the biggest thing with that is you didn't penalize Kentucky, keeping them as a 3 seed. You didn't move them to a 4 seed because of their injuries. So why are we holding a team out of the NCAA tournament because of injuries? I think there would be some large inconsistency there if West Virginia doesn't make it. But to be completely honest, like, I had West Virginia as a team that had a bye. So I still think they have a shot to make it in. We're still waiting on one side of the bracket to come in. So I would expect West Virginia to be the 11 seed in this next region. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see on that. Let me go ahead and make my final picks real quick before it comes back on. Clemson versus McNeese. I think I like Clemson in this one. McNeese, again, a really trendy pick, but I'm going to be picking Clemson in this one. Purdue High Point. I'm actually going to be picking High Point. This Purdue team is terrible at defending the twos, and High Point can get into the paint and make some noise. I think High Point could get the upset against Purdue, but I'm not 100% confident in that. Illinois versus Texas or Xavier. This Illinois team is gross. They either will beat a team by a ton or lose by a ton, but I'm going to pick Illinois. Kentucky, Troy, Kentucky. Tennessee, Wofford, I'm going with Tennessee. And then UCLA versus Utah State. I'm going to be sticking with UCLA, but Utah State is a team that could win that matchup. Our next number 1 seed is Florida, coming out of the West region. And their opponent's going to be Norfolk State. Seems like a staple in the NCAA tournament recently. Norfolk State just always seems to get there. But obviously, I don't think Florida's going to have too many issues. They've been playing like the best team in the country recently. You get UConn coming in as an 8 seed, and then there's Oklahoma. So, as I mentioned, Oklahoma had to be in, especially if you have Texas, and they had the better resume than Texas, both out of the SEC. So, wasn't expecting that to come any different. Then in our 5-12 matchup, we see Memphis. Something big to note about this, we actually see 2 SEC teams having the ability to match up in the next round, which is something that you don't normally see. But with Texas getting in, I think the SEC might be getting their 14 teams, which is absolutely incredible. A record by far with 14 teams from the same conference getting into the NCAA tournament. Just goes to show how amazing that team was this year. Then in the 5-12 matchup, we see Memphis versus Colorado State. Colorado State just won the Mountain West Conference tournament. Nick Clifford, a player to watch out for, could make a name for himself in March. I think he's a prospect for the NBA for sure. And Colorado State could beat Memphis in that first round matchup. Then we have Maryland going up against Grand Canyon out of the WAC, just getting into the tournament with their win last night against Utah Valley. That was someone I had projected. They came in as a 2 seed in the WAC, but I projected Grand Canyon to win that one, and they did. We have Missouri coming in as a 6 seed. Missouri was a team that went on some big runs this season, had some great wins, but then also went on some runs where they took some tough losses. So hard team to gauge. Drake gets an 11 seed, so getting a lot of respect out of the Missouri Valley Conference. Bennett Sturts, one of the names that you really need to look out for in March as well. I'm liking the matchup for Drake with Missouri. Think they could get the win over the Tigers, but obviously we'll have to wait and see in that one. Then the 3 and 14 matchups, we see Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. I really like this team. JT Toppin, Big 12 Player of the Year, coming there from Lubbock. Had an incredible season. Going up against UNC Wilmington, who just won their conference tournament. That is a tough pill, Chris. I think Missouri's going to have a lot of trouble with Drake. An 11 seed makes sense. This team is very good. I was expecting Drake or UC San Diego, one of them, to get bumped up to an 11 seed, so it looks like they gave it to Drake. Then we see Kansas taking on Arkansas. I actually really like that first round matchup. And with that being the 7-10, I mean, it looks like Boise State's not getting in, San Diego State's not getting in, and Indiana. Those are the 3 teams that are getting left out. Also, West Virginia not getting in. I cannot believe that the Mountaineers did not get in that one. Wow. That's a big surprise for me. I thought West Virginia was pretty clearly in the field, to be completely honest. Then we have St. John's taking on Omaha to round out the NCAA tournament bracket for 2025. This is going to be a fun one. Florida versus Norfolk State. Obviously, I'm picking Florida in this one. Yeah, Aaron, that's a tough loss for West Virginia. The SEC bias was incredible. Obviously, that was the best team in the country. I'm not saying they weren't, so don't take that out of context in any way, but I cannot believe that West Virginia didn't just get into that field. I wasn't even expecting them to be in Dayton. I thought they could be because the injury might hurt them enough to move them to the first four, but not even getting in is absolutely incredible. It's tough that we're not going to see Javon Small play in March. He had an incredible year for the Mountaineers this year, so that is extremely surprising. But Florida having to take on UConn or Oklahoma, that could be a tough game in the second round. Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma had a really good start to the season, then kind of hit a lull in the midseason, but has come on strong recently for the Sooners. Obviously going up against UConn that is going for a three-peat. I'm going to pick Dan Hurley in this one, but I'm not confident in the Huskies right now. So if Oklahoma were to win that one, that'd be not that big of a surprise for me. Memphis taking on Colorado State. I think I'm going to pick Colorado State. And before I keep going, they're showing conferences with multiple bids. We have SEC coming in with 14 bids into the tournament. Big 10 gets 8. Big 12 only gets 7. Again, tough loss for West Virginia not getting to the 8. But those are the 3 top ones. For their last 4 in, they had Texas, Xavier, San Diego State, and San Diego State is in. I keep saying that they're not, but they were the team playing North Carolina initially. So San Diego State and North Carolina, and then those teams, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, and Boise State. Boise State being out there, they had to win the Mountain West then with how the committee has them. But West Virginia, Aaron, was the first team out, which is really tough to see. They haven't really beat anybody that's in the tournament since mid-January, so that's going to have a lot to do with it. But again, tough beat for the Mountaineers. All right, getting back to our predictions, we have Colorado State taking on Maryland or Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a team, they got their first NCAA tournament last year with their big upset over St. Mary's. They might be able to do it again, but give me the Crab 5 out of Maryland to get the win there. Missouri versus Drake. This is going to be a hot upset pick. I think a lot of people are going to be picking Drake in this matchup. Am I going to be picking it? Initially, yes, I'm going to be picking Drake, but I actually might be picking Missouri in this one. I do like Missouri and the size that they bring, and I think that could give Drake some trouble, especially Mark Mitchell. I think Daniel Abreu is going to be the one that's going to have to guard him, and that's going to be a tough cover for Abreu out of Drake. So Missouri might win that one, but I do really like this Drake team. Then we have Texas Tech taking on UNC Wilmington. I'm going to be picking Texas Tech in that one. JT Toppin, Big 12 Player of the Year. They also have Darian Williams that he was struggling with injury earlier, but he's back. I think this Texas Tech team is primed for a big run in March. Then we have Kansas versus Arkansas. Preseason number 1 team in the nation, Kansas, all the way down at a 7 seed is really crazy to think about. Obviously, we saw North Carolina do it where they didn't even make the tournament. So Kansas not having that bad of a season, but it's crazy to think that we can see Kansas down here as a 7 seed, and honestly going to be a tough matchup for anyone that they face. I'm going to be picking the Jayhawks to get past Coach Cal and the Arkansas Razorbacks, but Coach Cal versus Bill Self in the first round matchup is going to be a really fun watch. And then St. John's versus Omaha. Omaha, one of the best traditions in all of college basketball, beating the trash can after they get their wins. But I don't think that's going to be enough to get them over the hump of St. John's. And Omaha, surprising enough, thought they were going to be a 16 seed, so getting them to move up to the 15 seed, good for them. But again, I don't think they're going to have the ability to beat St. John's in this one. So give me St. John's in that matchup. So before we go, let's go ahead and look at our entire field of 68. Our 1 seeds, Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida, which, to no surprise, the 2 seeds go the same way with Michigan State, St. John's, Alabama, and Tennessee. Those are all exactly what we expected. Let's see if we can go in and see. Okay, so we got Auburn taking on Alabama State, St. Francis, Louisville, Creighton as our 8-9 matchup, Michigan, UC, San Diego, A&M versus Yale, Ole Miss, San Diego State, or North Carolina. Again, I cannot believe that North Carolina got into this field. Iowa State versus Lipscomb, Marquette versus New Mexico, Michigan State versus Bryant. Again, biggest upset watches I would say are Michigan and Texas A&M in this one, and then also Ole Miss. I don't necessarily consider 7-10 matchups as upsets, but if you want to consider it, New Mexico could get over Marquette, but I don't really like anyone else in this field. And the next one, I think the 9 over the 8 with Baylor, Liberty, and it could be Oregon, and Akron could be Arizona. VCU could be BYU. I like Wisconsin over Montana. I don't think they're going to have any issues there either. All right, next one. Upsets that we could see. McNeese over Clemson could be a maybe. High Point over Purdue. And then Utah State and UCLA. That's another 7-10, so I don't think too much of that. And then the last one. Colorado State over Memphis. I really like that one. Grand Canyon versus Maryland. Could see it going either way, but I'd probably lean Maryland. Missouri Drake. I really like this Drake team. And then another 7-10 that obviously could go anyway. When you see the ones that are 7-10s and 8-9s, those are kind of toss-ups at that point in terms of either team being able to win. But that is just a tough beat. So again, to recap, teams that did not make it that we expected: West Virginia, Indiana, and then Boise State. I didn't think they would make it, but they were on the outside looking in. So tough beat for West Virginia in this one, but that's incredible. I can't believe that that's how it ended up wrapping up. Looks like the committee is going to be speaking to everybody at CBS now, explaining their rationale behind a lot of their decisions. The one thing I want them to ask about is North Carolina. How did we get North Carolina in the field? Not only North Carolina, but also Texas. Those are the 2 I really want them to explain what they did and how they got them into it. Bubba Cunningham is the chairman of the board. He's also the director of athletics in North Carolina. So that's going to be a very interesting talking point when we talk about the seeding of this bracket and who got into the field and who didn't. But I think that's all that I have for today's live stream. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like this live stream and also subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. The plan is to be doing a live stream after each round of the NCAA tournament, recapping it, discussing our picks, how they turned out, and everything like that. But also, we're going to be posting content daily in regards to March Madness, so make sure to stay tuned in for that. Have those post notifications on. And again, we appreciate everyone for joining today. We'll see you in the next one.